So I'm Hadley.
I'm Maya.
And
I'm Ashley. Oh,
you're totally good. So we're with Trini Tribe, and this is our Trini Talk. And today we're with our dear friend, who this is going to be confusing because we want to call her Ashley the entire time. She also goes by Sue, so if we interchange this back and forth, know that she goes by both. But Susan Ashley Hunt, who is an amazing yoga teacher. She is just a jack of all trades. We'll let her talk about all the things that she's doing right now and has done throughout her life. But we are so happy that you're here. Thanks for joining us.
yeah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to start off, we talk about connection a lot in Trini Tribe and, with each other and with our clients. And so we just wanted to start off by asking, what does connection mean to you?
Certainly. So I would think being in contact with oneself is definitely the foundation of that word. So if we're not quite sure where we are in space or who we are or what we're feeling, then it's quite difficult to connect to things that appear to be outside of us, be that friends, family, job, coworkers. So I think that the essence of what it means to be human is to live in a psychosocial sphere, and connection is inherent in almost everything that we do, and sometimes can be missed if we're not connected to self first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When you say connected to self first, for your own self, how do you know that you're connected? How do you know that you're connected, and then how do you know when you're not connected?
Sure. Well, technically you can never be not connected. So there's a big part of me that trusts and sees the world that way, to the point that, I can never be disembodied. Like this time around, I chose to appear as Susan Ashley Hunt, and therefore I'm in contact with all the ways that she feels, thinks, and perceives. Question being, do I hear all the ways that she feels, thinks, and perceives on a regular basis?
Mm-hmm.
So emotion is a really big part of my life and my spiritual practice, and watching the fluctuations of those emotions can definitely tell me what connection feels like, and not in a good and bad way, but more in an adjective way, like, ooh, yeah, this is serious, or oh wow, this is so relaxed, right? So I feel like being really connected to my meta dialogue allows me to understand how I'm perceiving and reading a situation. Meta meaning like inner voices.
Thank you. I was going to ask, I was like, just for the people who have no idea what meta means. Yeah, that inner dialogue of just what's going on.
Yeah, like my commentary on life, every millisecond of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So then, since we're kind of talked about how we cannot really be disconnected from ourselves, disconnect, it feels kind of not the appropriate word then to use. I feel like it's like an easy word for it that I see a lot in, you're like, are you disconnected from yourself? Are you not? More, it's kind of like, are you in tune with yourself? Are you listening? Are you open? So I kind of see it more of like a valve, like, are you open or are you closed? So when you're closed off, if you are feeling closed off and you're maybe not in tune with your emotions, what other ways do you know that like things are not jiving right?
So, there's a bunch of different categories of emotion, and then like that's a fleeting thing that comes and goes in a matter of seconds, milliseconds. And then that can also turn, from the Buddhist perspective, into a mood that could last, like hence depression or OCD syndrome or something like that, where you feel like you have an overall kind of murkiness or cloudiness that's obstructing you from actually seeing what's going on in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would say at this point, I'm pretty in tune with how rapidly my perception and my emotions change. So really, it's keeping up with that and not wishing it to be different, because each thing that happens is like, whoa, like almost mind-blowing, to the point of like, how am I going to integrate this? and that happens on, a 5-minute basis to a 5-hour basis. So some of the things I do with my clients is like, we'll keep a mood journal and they'll check in, 10 to 15 to 25 times a day, so that you can get a real baseline of, okay, this is literally how much I'm fluctuating as a human. So that's definitely going to change the definition of connection.
Yeah. And I feel it also changes people's perception too, that that we're always supposed to be happy. That like this greener pasture, we're always, trying to strive for this sense of happiness. And if we're allowing ourselves to really be open with our full range of who we are, happiness is just like a real small piece of the puzzle. And that doesn't mean that all of the other things, are less significant. So that's, I love that new journal. That's great. Yeah, that's great.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, happiness is like a bubble to be popped, for sure, when you step on the mindfulness path, because it's, setting a bar in front of you that's going to continually create lack of happiness. So, part of being human is feeling the full experience of it. And that takes a lot of self-resilience, and the container has to be really strong, meaning physical body-mind relationship, to go to the places of disease or unhappiness or depression or lack of self-worth or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like being able to shift, in and out of those different moods and being like okay with that, rather than just always feeling like we need to be at this level, but like meeting ourselves where we are. I feel like that's big part of that practice too, of like just accepting, but also realizing that you can come back to, and it's kind of that ever-changing body that we are,
Yeah, definitely. I think acceptance is a big piece, and then also taking full ownership of change. That I'm the pilot. So, it's one thing to tell someone over and over again, like, just accept that you're unhappy, right? Just accept that you're depressed. Just accept that you're not doing what you want to be doing with your life, right? But the other edge of that is that you have to take full ownership of the unhappiness and take full ownership of the responsibility of what it means to change that state of being for yourself, because nobody else can do it but you.
Yeah, right.
So, that's a big puzzle piece of what acceptance means, I think, is, okay, cool. So I accepted that I made myself unhappy. So now I also am accepting the responsibility of changing that state.
Yeah. What do you think kind of led you, like, what was the first spark of that awakening, if you will, or just like the realization that you wanted to start this path with mindfulness and the very beginning?
Yeah, totally. So embodiment practice has always been a big part of my life. I was like an elite gymnast as a child and had a funny childhood, like some homeschooling, and just like we moved a bunch. And so I found myself with a herniated L4, L5 when I was 13. And that is just no fun, because I'm 32 now. So at that time, like alternative medicine, you just didn't really have a lot of access to it. So I find myself at 13, like bouncing up and down on one of those physio balls next to a bunch of 60-year-olds in like back rehab. And I was just like, 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 what? Like, everyone's, 5 decades older than me. Like, this is just not okay. I want to be doing something else. And luckily I got some like downloads of acupuncture and different things like that in my early teens, and just got around different thinking people because of the injury. And so that gave me access to a little bit of Buddhist thought. So I was like, Mom, take me to Barnes and Nobles. And I got this book called Simple Buddhism. And it's this tiny little book. It was like when I was 13 or 14. And it's a little red cover. And I'll never forget it because it was just like tiny little quotes from the Dalai Lama, like each page describing what the Noble Truths were and things like that. And actually, I did my first 200-hour at Yoga Home in Cincinnati when it was one of the first 2 yoga studios in Cincinnati. I did that in high school. And so then I went to undergraduate school, and the only thing that could keep me showing up for class was a two-sport college athlete, and that was like very, very important to me. And Buddhist thought was like the class, you know, it was the only class that I really showed up for early, sat in the front row, answered all of her questions, like the annoying one, like, yeah, me, no one else has their hand up but me. But in no other classes was I like that, you know. So I had a super liberal family, and the only rules we had was go to college. If you're going to do drugs, tell us, because we might want to try it with you, and you have no curfew. So it was very like I just grew up in a self-motivated environment, and knowing that Buddhist thought was really the only thing that would get me to show up. And I wanted to continue to not drop out of college, and then finished undergraduate school and started studying it in graduate school, transpersonal psych, but hadn't really been in the yoga studio community as of yet to that point. Had done a lot of like ashram living, and it's really easy to like stay on the path when you're not in the real world all the time. Yeah. So I did a bunch of ashram living and a bunch of traveling that really sort of kept me like seeking in very deep, motivated ways.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know, like when I did my first yoga training, what I appreciated about it so much is that since it was over a 9-month period, and it wasn't like, that there's nothing wrong with like intensives when you go, for a month to some tropical island and do your yoga. But it forced me to live my life and use my practice and really integrate it and see how it was going to work or not work or what needed to change. And so, I just know I appreciate you bringing that up, because staying on the path, you have to be, I think you have to like test the waters and kind of like veer off the path and see if like, is the information still there? Am I using it? Is it soaked in? Do I need to learn more? Do I need support?
Yeah.
So that's
totally.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Buddhist studies, yoga. So how does that land to like where you are right now? How are you integrating those things, and what does that look like in your life in the current?
Totally. So it's my whole life. Yeah. I've for about the last 18 months been studying with a Kundalini teacher, so that's been really transformative and really, really exciting. And also started working with students one-on-one remotely as well. So that really, motivated me to also be deep in my process so I could hold the space for that. I travel and teach a bunch. I do workshops all over the US, sometimes like a 3-hour and sometimes a 3-day. It just depends on, what I can offer at the time and what fits in with the overall studio schedules. And then I teach retreats. So I have 3 coming up in 2019. I had 1 in 2018. And about 2015, 2016, I took like a 2-year break from teaching so that I could really ground back down into my practice and decide like how I wanted these one-on-ones to develop. And then eventually I'd like to do one-on-one retreats. That would be sort of a culmination after you did my prerequisite 9-month program. So I'm currently building a 9-month program with my sister that's all about Kundalini contemplation and creativity, realizing your own creativity.
Beautiful.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so a bunch of things in the works, and then a bunch of health products that help build the container. So that really is like prerequisite 1. And I'm really into prerequisites nowadays. There's so many people practicing.
Yeah, the prerequisites are just like it's getting that foundation laid out. It's making sure that the bones are right, that all the structure that you have, like you think of like your body as a house, like your windows, they all close, your piping's all working, and because we can spiritualize things, we can do amazing chaturangas, we can hike in the woods every day, but if we don't have kind of a functioning body to then also be able to integrate those things, like it's a little tricky as a 13-year-old with a herniated was it a herniated disc? Like
yeah.
That's so fun. So my question for you, it came in and it came right out. Um, so when you're working with people one-on-one, and I mean, just even within your workshops, with everything that you do, how do you, as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, how would you describe, or how do you think like all your practices best support you? Like, in what ways do you feel like it most fills your cup? I know you said like it's your life, but can you?
So like full soul pleasure, like it has to be that. If it's not that, then it's not a situation that I want to go back into. So, definitely searching and sorting through things in that way. And I think meditation is, at the top of the list for me to stay connected. And is this, full soul pleasure? Like, does this feel like I'm actually getting as recharged as the students? If not, then I don't want to be in an emotionally draining environment. And there's something that's disorganized or disharmonious. And sometimes that might be coming from me, and sometimes that might be coming from the group that I'm in. So really being able to sort of sort through that energy and decide, like, is this like a full body yes? Is this a place that I really want to be and be using my creative life force here?
I feel like that's a really hard thing for so many of us to process, because, like, for instance, I'm giving kind of a broad example, but that I have some friends that work in their job life where it's just a job, it's not a full soul yes. So it's like, how do we, because I like what you're saying, and I live my life by that as well, and that's why I'm an entrepreneur myself, and we work with individuals in the way that we do, but for someone who's not necessarily like on the path that we're on, or an entrepreneur, or really working just different jobs, or living their life differently, what would you advise in being able to still have like that soul yes? Like, how does that work for them?
Totally. So it's not an instantaneous thing, that's for sure. And it's always like a trial and error situation where you get a little closer and a little closer and a little closer. So I work with many clients, right, that aren't yoga teachers, that, don't wear malls around their wrists and don't drink green juice every day. Right. And, some of them are in the NYC corporate world. Some of them work for insurance companies. Some of them are moms, they're stay-at-home moms. Right. So the question is always being in deep contact with your fear. And if there's any ooh, no. Even if it's in your insurance job, right? Then looking at that sort of unrest in the body is clearly not a full soul yes, right? So it doesn't mean that like you're going to have this Instagram picture perfect life to have full soul yes. It means that we need less of the destructive emotion sticking, and so we need to communicate with the coworker differently, right? We need to draw a different boundary. We need to get a different job. Right. So I just had 2 women go through my 90-day, and they both changed jobs in that 90-day period. Right. Because it was a big, like, and not like, oh yeah, I'm, switching from this job I've worked for 3 months to do this other one that I've worked for 3 months. This is like, I'm leaving a corporation that I've worked for 20 years. I'm leaving a corporation that I've worked at for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's being not afraid of your own fear, and really being able to dissect it so it can send you messages of how you're not listening to full body yes, soul yes.
Would you say that's like, strengthening your connection to your intuition and awareness? Like, would you say those are kind of the same thing in a way? Or
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I hesitate to use the word intuition because I feel like there's a lot of layers that need to get stripped down before we can really hear like that lightning bolt voice, right? And a lot of us just don't have it, especially if we're bogged down with a bunch of just our own mental drama.
Yeah.
So we sort of have to sort through mental drama. When I say mental, I mean physical, body-mind connection drama. If we want to sort through that, and that will develop the span of awareness. And then maybe the awareness can hear intuition. So You know, like my teacher won't even take you on until you've meditated for 1,000 days. Right. So I feel like there's so much self-resilience and so much like awareness building that has to happen before intuition is ready to drop in. But both, you know, and we're talking 3, 5, 10 years down the path of meditating, not, you know, 90 days or 1 month, or I went to yoga for 1 month, so now I can hear my intuition. Yeah, so sometimes it helps like just reframe those ideas, like what are they and what do they really feel like?
Yeah, we see so many programs, blog posts, newsletters, all of those things where it's like, you know, get connected in 30 days, like learn how to meditate. And so in this like fast paced, like needing, seeking immediate, what am I trying to say? Not results, but like gratification. Thank you. I was going to say satisfaction, gratification. For someone who is just starting on that path though, and that has like, when they hear, you know, 1,000 hours meditating, they're like, holy, what, you know,
Right.
how do you start to navigate that path? I mean, and it doesn't even have to be that path. I think that's another thing that can sometimes deter people from wanting to go a little bit deeper, is that they think maybe like going deep has to take you on this like one way, where I think like going on a deeper path can take you in all to these different branches. And that's what's like so beautiful about it. So let me go back to my initial question is, you know, what advice would you give like the newbiest of newbies, I don't actually really like to meditate that much. Yoga is not my thing, but I still want to grow and get deeper.
Totally. Not sure I'm the one to answer that question, because I do think that, so a lot of people will ask me, and, you know, I teach intro to meditation workshops and different things like that. And the question will be, or the underlying theme is, I want to be happier and I want to be healthier. So tell me what to do. Tagline, not willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
Right.
Unspoken line. Right. So the question becomes, I just don't have time. I'm so busy. I have all these things to do. And it's like, okay, great. That's incredible. When you actually want to do the work, then that's where I can meet you. Right. So there is no real advice except for sit down and do the work. Yeah, because we can avoid every single thing in our own body-mind relationship until we're sick, until we ruin our marriage, until we hurt our children, until we transgress ourselves, right? It's not built into Western culture to slow down and understand that I can actually be far more productive if I have a chance to integrate, to be receptive, to rest, to create, to listen, right? So I mean, I do think that spirituality and the practice of meditation, however you want to do it, is a paradigm shifting thing. And if we don't treat it as such, then it won't, right? It won't. And that's just the bottom line.
I think that's great advice. So you just keep on saying that, sister. That's great. Yeah, you got to do the work. You can read all the blog posts and listen to all the podcasts and read all the fancy magazine covers, but essentially you have to sit down with yourself and get real about what is it that you want. So that's great.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And a long time ago, I had a teacher kick a student out of class when we were in like intensive teacher training, and he was like a master student. And it was a big lesson to me of like, because the student was sort of goofing off and not sitting with a straight spine and sometimes checking his phone. And, you know, and my teacher was like, look, like if you're not sitting down to do this, then I wouldn't pay for the program. I wouldn't waste the time. Don't waste mine. Right. And so it was like a really big teaching for me to learn, like, okay, like not everyone has the time and they're not ready to do it. And that doesn't mean that that's like better or worse. That just means that it's like not a space where they're finding realization. Like the ego has to be convinced that this is valuable time spent. And if they're not really ready to make that trade, then that's totally cool. Like get on the treadmill, you know, like go do what you got to do. Yeah.
I think sometimes, you know, these practices like meditation and different practices that we try to incorporate in our lives. We often say, and I've been guilty of it too, of just saying to like clients that we work with, of, well, you know, these practices can meet you where you are. But what I was hearing from you is that it's kind of, you have to meet yourself where you are to kind of understand that it's not just the practice that's going to come in and heal you and make you better. It's yourself. So I was just, is that what you're saying? Like it's more from yourself, of understanding that you have to put in the time for yourself.
Yeah, certainly. And it, you know, it doesn't have to be 2.5 hours a day. Right. And that's the thing I think that maybe could be scary, or there's a misperception there, right? It could be 6 3-minute periods. Right. But so like we literally have to train the body to be healthy and happy before the mind's going to say, oh yeah, okay, cool. Like this is a new way that I see. This is a new way I perceive. This is a different way. I've got to, you know, program the body to do that. So, you know, 1 minute a day is a great place to start, but that's like the first 7 days. And then you go 2 minutes, and then you go 3 minutes. And then, you know, I mean, you guys know, it helps with clients sometimes if you set a framework so that they have like a tapas to work within, and you can describe that any way that you want. And great when they don't sit down to do their work, like what was it, who was it, when was it, what happened, right? Because all of that is just as valuable information as sitting down to meditate.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting that. I appreciate that a lot. So with you had mentioned a couple, kind of jumping back to when you were talking about like the programs and some things, some upcoming events. Can you tell us what's one? I know you're excited about all of them, but what's one that's coming up? You have one I know in Cincinnati, I should say. Tell us about it. What's happening?
So this fall, I'm going to be climbing in Red River Gorge for 2 months. So that's awesome. Yeah. And so excited about that. So, you know, in the past, I've definitely run myself ragged. This year, I'm like, good effing job, Susan Ashley Hunt. Give yourself these 2 months. Yes, I will be teaching, but only 5 days out of the 2 months. So taking on private clients when I'm done rock climbing for 2 months. And I'll be in Columbus and Cincinnati. And mindfulness weekend in Cincinnati and meditation, it's in correlation with a teacher training, which is always great because those students are showing up no matter what, and they're going to help hold the space. So if you're not a teacher trainee, it's a really great place to be. The workshop's like a little bit more rigorous, and not in a negative way, but attention wise, like, yeah, okay, these people are in here for a reason. So great community to jump in with if you ever get the chance to do the crossover like that. And then I'll be in Columbus in September and October, also in correlation with the teacher training. And then the afternoons are open public workshops that are mostly geared towards yoga ethics and meditation and kriyas.
Wow, that's awesome. What's the best way that somebody can find your information right now? Is your website? Is it like social media?
Social media or my website. Yeah, so livelightlyyoga.com, and then my Instagram handle is livelightly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So before we wrap things up, to bring us back to present moment, what are you most proud of today?
My marriage. And I'll cry.
Well, no, you're gonna make
fight the water work. So, my marriage, yeah, totally. It's integrated. We work together. We climb together. We live together. So, you know, I don't just teach yoga. I also run another company with my husband, and Live Lightly is also doing well, and he's stepping in to be a big part of that. So it's great to be able to see like our creative energy and like our love for one another be the foundation for those things. And it's definitely not always easy and not always comfortable. We definitely have different human default modes that often, you know, have their issues with one another. But I've always wanted a spiritual partner like that, where I feel like I could really do all of the above with. And I waited for the right one at the right time.
Lovely.
Yay. I like what you're proud of. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing time with us, for sharing your thoughts. And, it's like that gentle, tough love, do the work. And it's a good message to keep on sharing. So we appreciate it.
Totally.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.